because of matters that are outside of my control, including family health issues. All right? So I'm not just, oh, there's Mark. It's Monday. He must be off. Trust me. I'd rather be behind this microphone. Trust me. I'd rather be behind this microphone. Enough said. Okay. There is a ton to get to today, and we're going to get to all of it. First, I want to take you down memory lane, and I'm setting something up. I'm setting a foundation, so please follow, and you'll follow through with me here. Jim Comey, the former FDI director, at a hearing on March 30, 2017, not that long ago. Cut 3, go.
With respect to the president's tweets about alleged wiretapping directed at him by the prior administration, I have no information that supports those tweets, and we have looked carefully inside the FBI. The Department of Justice has asked me to share with you that the answer is the same for the Department of Justice and all its components. The department has no information that supports those tweets.
This is a very slippery response, as we're about to find out. He is the director of the FBI. And he says, look, we have no information at the FBI, and the Justice Department wants me to tell you the same thing, that the president's wires, in effect, were tapped. Right? James Clapper, former director of national intelligence, I'll meet the press, March 5, 2017, about 2 weeks earlier. Excuse me. Cut 2, go.
If the FBI, for instance, had a FISA court order of some sort for a surveillance, would that be information you would know or not know?
Yes.
You would be told this?
I would know that.
If there was a FISA court order on something like this?
Something like this, absolutely.
And at this point, you can't confirm or deny whether that exists?
I can deny it.
There is no FISA court order?
Not to my knowledge.
Of anything at Trump Tower?
No.
Well, that's an important revelation at this point.
So Comey testifying that with respect to the president's tweets about alleged wiretapping directed at him by the prior administration, I have no information that supports those tweets. Directed at him. Then you have Clapper flat out saying there is no FISA court order. Not to my knowledge. Not to my knowledge. We have a CNN report yesterday afternoon, exclusive to CNN. The irony will become apparent in short order. And there's 3 reporters. Manafort wiretapped under secret court orders. U.S. investigators wiretapped former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort under secret court orders. That's a FISA court order. Before and after the election. Before and after the election, sources tell CNN. An extraordinary step involving a high-ranking campaign official now at the center of the Russia meddling probe. Now, they say it's an extraordinary step because, they want you to take by that an extraordinary step. There must be some terrible things here. It's an extraordinary step, ladies and gentlemen, because the Obama administration was surveilling Trump world. It was surveilling Trump world. The government snooping continued into early this year, including a period when Manafort was known to talk to President Donald Trump. So now they're surveilling Donald Trump, not directly, but through the back door, incidental surveillance. At this point, he's the president-elect and eventually, of course, the president. Some of the intelligence collected includes communications that sparked concerns among investigators that Manafort had encouraged the Russians to help with the campaign, according to 3 sources familiar with the investigation. Now, those 3 sources are in the FBI. They're in the FBI, senior levels of the FBI. I told you how this works. Now, listen to this. However, 2 of the sources caution the evidence is not conclusive. The evidence not conclusive, 2 out of the 3 say. They wiretapped Manafort, and the evidence still not conclusive. Special counsel Robert Mueller's team, which is leading the investigation into Russia's involvement in the election, has been provided details of these communications. They've also hired another attorney who's another liberal Democrat who's made contributions to Democrats. That's now 17 by my count. 17. And the manner in which they're investigating this, the manner in which they're going after Paul Manafort really is truly, in my view, grotesque. And I don't even know Paul Manafort. That's beside the point. So here we have CNN reporting that, in fact, there was a FISA court order. There may have been 2 FISA court orders, as a matter of fact. They say it's unclear when the new warrant started. Sources say there was a second warrant, that is from the FISA court, was part of the FBI's efforts to investigate ties between Trump campaign associates and suspected Russian operatives. Okay, that sentence tells you then that the Trump campaign was being surveilled by Jim Comey, Loretta Lynch, and Barack Obama. Not that Barack Obama personally was scaling, climbing telephone poles and tapping into the wires, but Barack Obama had to know. You have a FISA warrant of this significance? He had to know the FISA application. And I've said this over and over again, but I guess Congress is filled with Helen Kellers, and that's this. They need to get a hold of the daily presidential briefings that cover the time frame. Such warrants require the approval of top Justice Department and FBI officials. That would have been Loretta Lynch and James Comey. And the FBI must provide the court with information showing suspicion that the subject of the warrant may be acting as an agent of a foreign power. It's unclear when the new warrant started. The FBI interest deepened last fall because of intercepted communications between Manafort and suspected Russian operatives. And among the Russians themselves, that reignited their interest in Manafort, the sources said. So, 2 warrants. 2 FISA warrants. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'll save it for Levin TV. But I did an entire program on this on the radio in early March on a Thursday. A few days later, I was on Fox and Friends Sunday. And I spent 12, 14, 15 minutes on this, laying out the case with exhibits, 8 exhibits, taken right out of the media, connecting the dots. The next day, I believe it was, I was on Hannity's show, doing exactly the same thing. Now, as I did this on my radio show that Thursday, Joe Pollack, over at Breitbart, who I have great respect for, he heard the show. Apparently when he was washing dishes or something. Maybe I ought to buy Joe a dishwasher. But anyway, and he wrote a piece about it, and he added some of his own thoughts. Apparently that information got to the President of the United States, and he tweeted what he tweeted. Now, I never said that his wires were tapped or anything of that sort, but I also said I understood exactly what he meant. He meant that there was some kind of surveillance activity going on, and I said on radio and TV on multiple times he was right, based simply on the reporting of the media and the diversity of the media that were reporting this. You remember all this? Now we know as a matter of fact that there was surveillance going on. Maybe at Trump Tower, we know there was wiretapping. We also know that Carter Page was caught up in one of these FISA warrants. So that's 2. Wiretapping. We know that Manafort had or has a residence in Trump Tower. And we also know that one of these warrants covered a period of time when Donald Trump, after Donald Trump had been elected President of the United States, perhaps during the early parts of his presidency. There is no question, ladies and gentlemen, that the top levels of the FBI, the top levels of the Justice Department, and I would argue the top levels, I've been around long enough, I know the top levels of the White House knew that the opposition campaign, that is the Republican campaign, the Republican presidential candidate, that there was surveillance activity going on. There's no question about this now, period. And I'm going to keep hammering this. Now, when I put the dots together, 6 months before the leaks that CNN received from the FBI and perhaps from Mueller's office, and I explained it, and Donald Trump tweeted what he tweeted, which was slightly inaccurate, and of course they were more interested in his tweet than in the fact of the police state tactics by the Obama administration. This is the sort of stuff we heard. I'm going to play a little montage. CNN's Jake Tapper, ABC News' Brian Ross, CNN's Brian Stetler, perhaps the worst of the bunch. CBS's Stephen Colbert. MSNBC's Joe Scarborough. Somebody from NPR. MSNBC's Chris Matthews. And HBO's John Oliver. This won't take long, but it'll show you the contempt that they had, not just for me, but for the truth, for the facts. They didn't care at all. They reversed course, on a dime. They reversed on a dime. I mean, the media essentially attacking the media, but not directly attacking me for quoting the media. Cut one, go.
White House officials say that the president's sources were various conservative outlets, most prominently perhaps radio host Mark Levin, who seemed to take three basic chunks of information and combine them into one conspiracy theory of what he calls a silent coup.
And on the conservative Breitbart website, which Friday highlighted a conspiracy-loving radio talk show host, Mark Levin.
Now, the story asserted that Obama has been trying to undermine Trump at every turn. As you can see from the headline, it was inspired by a Thursday night radio segment by conservative talk show host Mark Levin.
Apparently, this idea came from right-wing radio host and unlicensed gynecologist Mark Levin, who ranted about these wiretaps on his radio show. That show was then written up by Breitbart as Mark Levin to Congress investigate Obama's silent coup versus Trump.
What does the White House gain by the president by Steve Bannon most likely handing the president of the United States a Breitbart article and talking about what a rabid right-wing talk show host has been theorizing?
Start with firebrand conservative radio host Mark Levin. Briefly, for people who don't know, who is he?
He's got quite a following, and he's not just a conservative figure, but often espousing relatively radical positions about the need to reinvent the Constitution and the government and ways in which we think about society.
The notion that Mark Levin is a news outlet. It's not the New York Times. It's not the Washington Post. It's not the Wall Street Journal. It's not the LA Times. It's not a major news network. It's Mark Levin, a guy who, I know what talk radio guys do, on left and right, mostly on right. They rile people up with outrageous charges, and nobody keeps count of them. But here's the President of the United States getting his information from these people.
Evidence for suggesting President Obama has committed a crime seems pretty thin.
The detailed speculation from a conspiracy-loving talk show host, Mark Levin.
Okay, I think we can now officially declare that Trump has a worse media diet than the son of Sam Killer. And he got all his news from a talking dog who told him to murder.
All right, that's enough. So you see, ladies and gentlemen, our media, for the most part, it's really no different than the media in any dictatorship or any communist regime. It's groupthink. It's a gang attack. It's a propaganda enterprise. Almost none of these people actually know me. And yet, look at the terms used to describe me. Radical conspiracy theorist, I'm just looking. Conspiracy-loving, right-wing talk show host. It goes rabid right-wing talk show host. That, of course, is from the Morning Schmo. Mr. Deliverance. Nothing here at all that describes who I am and what I actually am, because they're never going to do that. Never. The fact of the matter is, and I'm not going to sit here and give you my resume. You know my resume. You can Google it very, very easily. This is what they do to people who dare to stand up to them. This is what they do to people, in many cases, who speak the truth. I started putting together these public articles written by liberal media outlets, several of which by the New York Times. And it was clear to me that these police state tactics were going on. It was clear to me that there was at least one FISA warrant that had been issued. It was clear to me that there was surveillance taking place. Specific about wiretaps, but now we know it include wiretaps, right? That whole issue was mocked. People who were, the handful of people who were defending me were attacked as well. 11 times over at Conservative Review. 11 times they count this kind of reaction to what I did. ABC, Washington Post, New York Daily News, CNN on multiple occasions, New York Times, LA Times, The Guardian, The Daily Beast, The Atlantic, and, of course, the AP, which sent it nationwide. You don't even recognize yourself by the time these people were done. But I didn't care. I fought them and fought them and fought them. And now they're silent. They're silent about it. They don't say a word. Not a word. That's why Trump calls them fake media. That's why they're frauds. I'll be right back. It's reached out through the Democrats in Congress, through the top levels of the FBI, through the special counsel, and is still investigating Trump world. It's absolutely amazing to me. We had a story, and here's one today by the great Bill Gertz, great reporter at the Washington Free Beacon. We have Susan Rice, who was the National Security Advisor, admitting that she was unmasking Trump campaign people. Because of the United Arab Emirates, you know. She was concerned he had traveled to the United States for an informal visit with the Trump people. And that's her cover story. 3 officials who met with the representative from the UAE, and I'm going to continue to endorse Judge Roy Moore, and I'm going to have him on my radio show next week. Now, from time to time, people lobby me to do things, which is perfectly fine, but I do what I want to do. I'm my own man, and I do it based on principle. And I'm not saying Roy Moore is perfect, but I'm saying he will vote. He will vote the way we need a senator from Alabama to vote. And Luther Strange will not. Luther Strange is in the pocket of Mitch McConnell. I am sick and tired of Mitch McConnell. I am sick and tired of these clowns in the leadership of the Republican Party. So, if you're in Alabama, you actually have an opportunity to make a difference. Many of us don't have an opportunity. Only, 1/3 of the Senate is up. And we're looking around the country for other primaries to get involved in. I'm not linked up with anyone or any cause other than giving my own opinion based on my conservative beliefs. If they make a difference, great, and if they don't, I can't control that. But to me, it's a no-brainer. You vote for Roy Moore, not only to send a message to McConnell in Washington, but because I know the man will vote right, if not every time, virtually every time, from a conservative perspective. And I know McConnell's highlighting statements he made in the past and so forth and so on. I don't care. I don't care. I'm not buying. Don't take the bait. Don't buy into that. I don't care. What do you think of that? I don't care. I've also taken about 48 hours to look at this new Republican proposal, a so-called Graham Cassidy bill. I think our friend Rick Santorum had something to do with it, too. I'm going to endorse that, too, as a first step. Nobody has contacted me on this, and I don't want to be contacted on this. It's not a matter of lobbying me like on a candidate. It's about lobbying somebody on a bill. You look at the bill and you make your own decisions. No, it's not a perfect bill. I view it as a first step, but it's a step in the right direction. It's a step in the right direction. It's actually better than the last one that was defeated. Rand Paul's against it. I understand what Rand Paul wants. Rand Paul wants what we all want, just a clean repeal. But guess what? That ain't going to happen. So now what do? You let Bernie Sanders take over? No, Bernie Sanders can't take over. I'm not pushing this because it would be a win for Trump or a win for the Republicans. No. You and I want our health care system back. This is about the American people. It's not about a political force. It's not about a political party. It's not about a politician. It's about you. All right, let's circle back. And there is finally a good piece in the Wall Street Journal editorial page by James Freeman. I like James Freeman. I don't like most of the circle jerks over there, but I like James Freeman. And the essence of his piece today is, as his title says, the media is less interested in Obama administration wiretapping than how Trump described it. Which is something, again, that I pointed out 6 months ago. Who cares about the particulars of the Trump tweet? Well, the media do, because the media are a fraudulent operation. They are a joke. Now, I'm not going to hold my breath to get an apology from Jake Tapper or an apology from Brian Stetzler or an apology from the Morning Schmo and Mrs. Schmo or an apology from, from Chris Matthews or Brian Ross or any of the newspaper outlets. No, it's not going to happen. And they'll look for it. Well, no, he said Trump. Well, whatever Trump said. I spoke for myself. And they were, to a media outlet, wrong. Even the media outlets who got the FISA thing right ran away from it as soon as they saw where the sheeple were going with the media, the groupthink. They said, well, maybe we were wrong, and they stepped away. Well, now we know there was a FISA warrant. Now we know there may have been 2 FISA warrants. And this is very, very important. So the question now is the same question it was 6 months ago. What did Barack Obama know, and when did he know it? You cannot tell me that the highest levels of the Department of Justice, the highest levels of the FBI knew, probably the highest levels of our intelligence agencies knew, and somehow the President's counsel didn't know, somehow Susan Rice didn't know and didn't tell Obama, somehow Valerie Jarrett didn't know and didn't tell Obama. That is BS. And we also know what Loretta Lynch is capable of. I mean, if she's going to tell Bill Clinton about what's going on with his wife, which apparently she did, she's certainly going to tell her boss, the President of the United States, Barack Obama, what's going on with Trump and Trump surrogates and Trump world. And I have no doubt she did. And yet the media have no interest in determining what Obama knew, none whatsoever. They have no interest in getting to the bottom of these leaks. They cite the truly perplexing congressman from South Carolina, who was a Republican, Trey Gowdy, as a fig leaf for what Susan Rice did. Susan Rice unmasked people who were meeting with the UAE who were Trump people, and she had no real basis for doing so. They trashed Devin Nunes. They smeared Devin Nunes. Republicans in the Senate smeared him. Republicans on TV smeared him. People who write, who claim to be Republicans, smeared him. I defended him because I knew he was onto something. And he was onto something. And there was unmasking. Despite what's... And we haven't even gotten to the full story there with respect to the former ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power. Incredible, is it not? Let's take some calls on this. I just think it's a big, big issue that, in fact, the Obama administration was using police tactics against the Trump world. There were, in fact, two FISA court warrants that were issued. There were leaks that took place, and you have to question how they came about. Well, we know how they came about. Through intelligence gathering, that's how they came about. And no doubt through FISA. And, of course, Mr. Mueller's running wild. He's having a hell of a good time because there's no checks and balances. He's hired every left-wing kook, radical, rabid Democrat he can as prosecutors. And they're absolutely out to destroy this guy, Paul Manafort. And, by the way, if they do indict him, the charges on the indictment, the counts on the indictment, are allegations, right? Sometimes they can be so overwhelming that the target will just say, okay, fine, I'll plead. What do you want from me? My family can't take it anymore. And if you look at the way Mueller's doing this, one after one of Mueller's children's husband, his son-in-law, one after Manafort's son-in-law, one after one of Manafort's former lawyers, one after Manafort's spokesman. So these are obvious, mob tactics, what's going on here. Old sort of, ham-fisted, iron-fisted tactics by an out-of-control prosecutor, in my view. And, of course, we now know they picked the lock of his condominium in Alexandria, Virginia at 6 a.m. in the morning. They picked the lock. They didn't even knock on the door. And obviously burst their way into it once they threw the door open, and they took everything. They even took pictures of his suits. Trying to make a financial case that he didn't pay tax. I just want you to think about yourself in that position. Man's not guilty of anything. They're investigating, of course. But you have FBI agents, IRS agents, all kinds of people in your home. It's a 1,600-square-foot home, and they were there for 10 hours. Even took a file labeled attorney-client privilege. For 10 hours. Again, taking photos of his clothes, making copies of everything on his computers. And there he is in bed with his wife in the middle of the morning or early morning, and these guys rush in. Just think about that. He's not a terrorist. He's not a mass murderer. Hasn't threatened anybody's life. It's not Hillary Clinton, where they're destroying emails left and right, and she's claiming that she doesn't have anything relevant, and yet we know she violated the espionage multiple times. Look at the difference in treatment. Look at the disparate treatment. She has a 3-hour interview. Comey had already decided he wasn't going to do anything. She wasn't under oath. It wasn't videotaped. Meanwhile, Mueller, who's not accused of violating the Espionage Act, certainly not yet, look at the treatment he gets. It's pretty damn incredible, is it not? Jim, South Amboy, New Jersey, the great WABC. Go.
Hey, Mark, how are you? Big fan. Listen, Mark.
Thank you.
It's starting to get very, very distressing because we're sort of like turning into a third world country with the news. I mean, because it's just propaganda. I can't even go to a station to listen to news anymore. The news stations have all sort of turned into the National Enquirer with these crazy stories. They twist and turn everything. I mean, even Fox to a certain degree has sort of eliminated their listen, I know you're a very much conservative, and maybe who I consider conservative you don't, but the conservative voices are they're getting rid of them little by little. Ever since the Sons took over. I mean, I have children that I try to point them towards listening to certain news outlets, but they can't.
Honestly, Fox is the least of the problem. I mean, they did ask me to come on and lay out my case, right? And I have to be honest with you, I'm invited on Fox all the time. I probably get 3 invitations a week. All the time. But, I've got 3 jobs and a family, and I got way too much going on right now. So the bottom line is this. It was CNN, it was MSNBC, it was ABC, it was CBS, it was NBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and so forth and so on, that not only didn't play stupid and silent on it, but went after the facts in order to destroy the facts. I was just a messenger. I just laid out what the media had said. And yet today, I will get an apology from none of them. No, it's not that I seek an apology. I seek a confession that these people will admit that what they did was wrong. But I know they won't, because they're in the tank. They are progressives. They are the Praetorian Guard for the left. They will never question Obama. They'll never want to know how high up this went in the White House, all the way to the top, I'm sure. They will never question Valerie Jarrett. They'll never question anybody. They even hire people who used to serve in this administration. They'll never question them about what they knew or what they might have known. Instead, they'll ask them about Trump. All right, my friend, I appreciate your call. Very, very good. I'll be right back. Tremendous speeches. The president gave an outstanding speech. And, of course, some of the media think, he was really what he said about North Korea. Ladies and gentlemen, dismiss the media, dismiss the liberal Democrats. They're the ones that got us in this position in the first place. The fact of the matter is the president gave a tremendous speech. The Prime Minister of Israel gave a tremendous speech. It's as if they were tag teaming. It's as if they were tag teaming. And we're going to get into some of this in the next hour because it's just too good not to. Did you know that 80% of employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site within a single day? If you're currently going through the hiring process or you're about to go through it, you need to know where to post your job to find the best candidates. That's why you need to go to ZipRecruiter.com today. And with ZipRecruiter, you can post your job to 100-plus job sites with just one click. Then their powerful technology efficiently matches the right people to your job better than anyone else. That's why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other job sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them. Simply screen, rate, and manage candidates all in one place with ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use dashboard. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes to find the most qualified job candidates with immediate results. And right now, my listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/Levin. That's ZipRecruiter.com/LEVIN. One more time to try it for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/LEVIN. All right, let's roll. Richard, Traverse City, Michigan, the great WTCM. Go.
Hey, Mark. Love your show. And my wife and I listen day after day, night after night, and we are just wondering when this nonsense is going to stop. When are people going to get indicted? When are people going to get prosecuted for these crimes that are going on, like we're hearing about again today? And we've known about this stuff for 6 months now. I just don't understand when somebody's got to pull the trigger. And I'm wondering, I know that you like Jeff Sessions, but he has got to make a move. Somebody's got to make a move here, or else people are really getting upset out here.
Listen, I agree with you. I don't know if crimes were committed or not. I don't know what Congress is doing. Probably nothing. In fact, Congress, guys like Trey Gowdy are giving cover for Susan Rice and so forth. But I wish I could answer you, Richard. I can't. And I've done my best to lay this out. I laid it out long before the news media, long before CNN put it all together. And when I did, of course, every one of them, including news organizations, had to put a little piece here and a little piece there. They turned around and went on the attack. So this is still a big deal as far as I'm concerned, and we're going to continue to press it. Emil, Totowa, New Jersey. I hope I got that right. The great WABC. Go.
You did, Mark. Totowa. I just saw that Mike Pence is going down sometime this week, within the next couple of days, to campaign for Luther Strange. Another disappointment, of course.
Well, that's a big disappointment. And let me tell you something, Emil. You constitutional conservatives out there, you're going to have to teach these guys a lesson. I'm talking to everybody who lives and is resident and able to vote in Alabama. You're going to have to teach these guys a lesson. If the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States want to throw in with McConnell, which is obviously what they've done, then we need to send them all a message loud and clear. And not just in Alabama, but every possible state that we can. The President, on the one hand, complains about the Republican Congress, and on the other hand, campaigns for the incumbents. Can you explain that to me?
No, and it gets more frustrating every day. And I know you've got a huge audience in Alabama, just like you do here in the tri-state area and up in New York. And what you just did is the right thing, and I hope the people in Alabama.
Well, I understand the election is next Tuesday, so we'll try and get Judge Moore on here this week. Their people have reached out to us, and we're gonna help pull them in, hopefully. But it's going to be up to the people of Alabama. Are they as frustrated as we are, Emil, or not? Do they think Mitch McConnell's doing a great job or not? And the president may not know what's best for him under these circumstances. I don't think he does.
Right.
But to me, it's what's best for the American people and the people of Alabama.
Yeah. Don't ever stop what you're doing.
Well, you're very kind. Thank you, Emil. And if you only knew what was going on, let me tell you, all my beloved Levinites. No, not with the companies that I work with. That has nothing to do with it. Joe, Harwington, Connecticut, the Mark Levin app. Quickly, sir. Go right ahead.
Hey, coming to you from the Democratic People's Republic of Connecticut. Hey, just real quick.
Okay. I want to ask you if you agree with the following. The conservative believes that unalienable rights attach to all human beings, but it is not necessarily the responsibility of the United States to enforce those rights overseas. How can it be? However, the conservative also believes there are times when evil perpetrated by a regime is so horrific that to ignore it tears at the moral core of American civil society. Although there can be no single doctrine that defines the elements of action or inaction in every case, once again, prudence must dictate if and when the cost of American lives and treasure is worth intervention on these grounds. Continue. I want you to continue listening to this for a moment, please. The conservative does not seek rigid adherence to any specific course of action, neutrality or alliance, preemptive war or defensive posture, nation building or limited military strike. The benchmark, again, is whether any specific path will serve the nation's best interests. It is difficult to imagine a theory under which a society could otherwise survive. For the statist, U.S. foreign policy is another opportunity to enhance his own authority at the expense of the civil society. Got that? Now, let me continue. For all his talk of American changing the world, the statist speaks not of American sovereignty, but of global citizenship. He speaks not of America as a nation-state, but as one nation among many. Rather than maintain its superpower status and act in its own best interests, the United States should relinquish its hard-earned position in favor of multilateral power sharing and conduct foreign policy, including decisions about military action in our own defense, through coalitions and international organizations. In this way, America's interests are subsumed and contained by the supposed interests of the rest of the world. And the rest of the world will look approvingly upon the United States for empowering other countries to participate in decisions about America's survival. The statist seeks treaties not to preserve and improve American society, but to commit the United States to a course of conduct that cannot be easily reversed with the change of administrations. He will enter into treaties, all kinds of treaties. In each instance, decisions will be made through international bureaucracies that do not have as their moral imperative the preservation and improvement of American society. This is a dangerous gambit. You folks agree with that? Sound familiar to anybody out there? You nationalist populists, does that sound familiar to you? That's Chapter 10 on self-preservation and liberty and tyranny. And there's more, but I'm not going to read it out loud. If nationalism means that our government is to act in America's national interest, then why would anyone oppose that who's a conservative or a patriot for that matter? Right? This is about national sovereignty. What's the purpose of national sovereignty? The purpose of national sovereignty is to secure individual sovereignty. Because if we export governing decisions, and that's what we're talking about, policy-making decisions, to international organizations, we're exporting law-making and policy-making decisions to people who have absolutely no ties to the United States, not to our culture, not to our society, and who have absolutely no responsibility to you and me, and we have no way of controlling them, no way of ridding ourselves of them. And this has been a statist project for decades, if not more than a century. So if this is what nationalism means, that's fine. But it is a very sloppy or clumsy use of the word nationalism. Because the progressives have been using the word nationalism for a long, long time. And I told you about Theodore Roosevelt's New Nationalism speech. You ought to read it. See how crazy it is. And look at the planks of the Progressive Party, which was the Bull Moose Party under which Theodore Roosevelt ran when he had left the presidency and decided to take on his former vice president and then President Howard Taft. And so, if this is nationalism, I guess I've been a nationalist longer than most people spouting it today. But it's more than this, too. Look at the Constitution, the issue of populism. There's nothing about populism in the Constitution. Quite the contrary. It's about republicanism. It's not about little d democracy. It's about little r republicanism. The only directly elected body in our original Constitution was the House of Representatives. Not the Senate, which was chosen by the legislature. Not the president, who has to go through the Electoral College. Not the vice president, who has to go through the Electoral College. And, of course, we know federal judges are appointed for life. If the framers of the Constitution wanted a populist Constitution, We wouldn't need separation of powers. Right? We wouldn't need the Electoral College. We wouldn't need a whole lot of stuff that's in the Constitution. We wouldn't really need a separation of powers, as I said, because populism first and foremost. So you wouldn't even need judicial review in many instances, right? As long as you have a vote, as long as the majority of the people or plurality of the people agree with something, then that's that. And yet that's not America. That's not the Constitution. And that has nothing to do with unalienable rights and the right to life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness. Populism has nothing to do with any of that stuff. Populism is a process. It's not a principle. And this is why I encourage those who claim to be populist nationalists, nationalist populists, or nationalists, or just populists, to do more. I want to encourage us to do more to explain, to write about their ideology, so more of us can better understand it and maybe accept pieces of it and certainly debate parts of it. But in terms of American national sovereignty, we should never, ever, ever convey parts of our sovereignty to any entity outside the United States. Never. That's what we mean by a nation state, and that's what we mean by national sovereignty, and again, the purpose of which is to protect individual sovereignty. Now, in that context, I think Donald Trump gave an incredible speech today. And let's begin to listen to some of it. I think you'll agree to it. Many of you were at work, you couldn't hear it and check it out. Let's start with cut 4. Go.
In America, we do not seek to impose our way of life on anyone, but rather to let it shine as an example for everyone to watch. This week gives our country a special reason to take pride in that example. We are celebrating the 230th anniversary of our beloved Constitution, the oldest Constitution still in use in the world today. This timeless document has been the foundation of peace, prosperity, and freedom for the Americans, and for countless millions around the globe whose own countries have found inspiration in its respect for human nature, human dignity, and the rule of law. The greatest in the United States Constitution is its first 3 beautiful words. They are, "We the people." Generations of Americans have sacrificed to maintain the promise of those words, the promise of our country and of our great history. In America, the people govern, the people rule, and the people are sovereign. I was elected not to take power, but to give power to the American people where it belongs. In foreign affairs, we are renewing this founding principle of sovereignty. Our government's first duty is to its people, to our citizens, to serve their needs, to ensure their safety, to preserve their rights, and to defend their values. As President of the United States, I will always put America first, just like you, as the leaders of your countries, will always and should always put your countries first.
Now, again, I'm not saying one is intentionally tracking the other, but I read you that passage from Liberty and Tyranny in Chapter 10. It says virtually the same thing. That, in fact, other countries put their citizens first, and we need to put our citizens first. And by the way, alliances, if it's the right alliance, does put our citizens in our country first. So it was interesting. He wasn't giving a speech about isolationism in any way or protectionism in any way, at least not what I heard. Cut 5, go.
The United States will forever be a great friend to the world, and especially to its allies. But we can no longer be taken advantage of or enter into a one-sided deal where the United States gets nothing in return. As long as I hold this office, I will defend America's interests above all else. but in fulfilling our obligations to our own nations. We also realize that it's in everyone's interest to seek a future where all nations can be sovereign, prosperous, and secure. America does more than speak for the values expressed in the United Nations Charter.
Let me stop a second. The difficulty, not in his speech, but the difficulty in this ideology is the bridge that has to be built between national sovereignty and commerce. And again, the nationalist populists now are going to have a better explanation of how this is supposed to work, what it is that their theory is, what it is that their thinking is. And who gets to decide, particularly when it comes to commerce, what puts America first, second, or third? The government? Politicians? They do a lousy job, don't they? The bureaucracy? They do a lousy job, don't they? And what's their constitutional authority? See, remember what I said. The purpose of national sovereignty is not to empower politicians and bureaucrats and people with great ideas who seek to impose them on everybody else. It's to secure individual sovereignty and individual liberty within a lawful context. Go ahead.
Citizens have paid the ultimate price to defend our freedom and the freedom of many nations represented in this great hall. America's devotion is measured on the battlefields where our young men and women have fought and sacrificed alongside of our allies. From the beaches of Europe to the deserts of the Middle East to the jungles of Asia. It is an eternal credit to the American character that even after we and our allies emerged victorious from the bloodiest war in history, we did not seek territorial expansion or attempt to oppose and impose our way of life on others. Instead, we helped build institutions such as this one to defend the sovereignty, security, and prosperity for all.
Cut 6. Now, this one is being attacked by the left, but who cares? Cut 6, go.
Now, North Korea's reckless pursuit of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles threatens the entire world with unthinkable loss of human life. It is an outrage that some nations would not only trade with such a regime, but would arm, supply, and financially support a country that imperils the world with nuclear conflict. No nation on earth has an interest in seeing this band of criminals arm itself with nuclear weapons and missiles. The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. The United States is ready, willing, and able, but hopefully this will not be necessary.
And, of course, the fools out there are saying, look at his provocation. Now, Rocket Man has threatened to shoot nuclear warheads into the United States at United States territories. He shot ICBMs over Japan. And he's doing all these provocative things, and yet it is said that Trump is provoking. That's how insane the left is. We've got a lot more. We'll be right back.
It is far past time for the nations of the world to confront another reckless regime, one that speaks openly of mass murder, vowing death to America, destruction to Israel, and ruin for many leaders and nations in this room. The Iranian government masks a corrupt dictatorship behind the false guise of a democracy. It has turned a wealthy country with a rich history and culture into an economically depleted rogue state whose chief exports are violence, bloodshed, and chaos. The longest suffering victims of Iran's leaders are, in fact, its own people. Rather than use its resources to improve Iranian lives, its oil profits go to fund Hezbollah and other terrorists that kill innocent Muslims and attack their peaceful Arab and Israeli neighbors. This wealth, which rightly belongs to Iran's people, also goes to shore up Bashar al-Assad's dictatorship, fuel Yemen's civil war, and undermine peace throughout the entire Middle East.
It's truly an outstanding speech, and we've got a couple more clips. Well, well, no more time to do that. Well, what do you folks think so far? As I say, we're going to get into more of his speech, and we're going to follow up with Bibi Netanyahu. That's a twofer. That's a twofer. Herman, Stamford, Connecticut. Well, Herman wants to talk about the wiretaps. Herman, go ahead, quickly, please.
Yes, Mark.
And get off the speakerphone and speak into the mouthpiece. Go ahead. Genucel is a natural plant stem cell treatment with advanced peptides for the pesky bags and puffiness under the eyes. And with Genucel's immediate effects, you'll see amazing results in about 12 hours. Call now and get double your order of Genucel for free. My family members, I have friends that use it, and they love it. Genucel is backed by the best customer service in the business and an ironclad 60-day money-back guarantee. Wow. But we're not finished. Call now and you'll get a 2-month supply of the legendary deep firming serum, also free. Call in the next 20 minutes and you'll get a free 2-month supply of Esotique RF. Now that's Chamonix's most popular wrinkle treatment, free. That's your fourth gift. It's not even Christmas or Hanukkah. Call 800-SKIN-604, 800-SKIN-604. Double up on Genucel. Get the deep firming serum and Esotique all free while supplies last. Order now, and Chamonix will include a special luxury gift. That's 5 gifts. Yours free just for trying Genucel. 800-SKIN-604, 800-SKIN-604. That's 800-SKIN-604. All right, let's continue. Trump's speech at the UN, which was an outstanding speech. And now he's pounding on Iran. He pounded on the UK, and now he's pounding on Iran. Cut 8, go.
We cannot let a murderous regime continue these destabilizing activities while building dangerous missiles, and we cannot abide by an agreement if it provides cover for the eventual construction of a nuclear program. The Iran deal was one of the worst and most one-sided transactions the United States has ever entered into. Frankly, that deal is an embarrassment to the United States, and I don't think you've heard the last of it, believe me. It is time for the entire world to join us in demanding that Iran's government end its pursuit of death and destruction. It is time for the regime to free all Americans and citizens of other nations that they have unjustly detained. And above all, Iran's government must stop supporting terrorists, begin serving its own people, and respect the sovereign rights of its neighbors.
Now, I agree with all that. But that's not isolationism. That's not purely, as I understand it, nationalism. You see my point, Mr. Producer? And I'm only raising these things not to be provocative, but to get people to start thinking about it, and those who espouse it to start thinking even more about it. Okay, he's talking about Iran serving its own people. Cut 9, here is the president slamming radical Islamic terrorism. Go.
We will stop radical Islamic terrorism because we cannot allow it to tear up our nation and indeed to tear up the entire world. We must deny the terrorists safe haven, transit, funding, and any form of support for their vile and sinister ideology. We must drive them out of our nations. It is time to expose and hold responsible those countries who support and finance terror groups like Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, the Taliban, and others that slaughter innocent people. The United States and our allies are working together throughout the Middle East to crush the loser terrorists and stop the reemergence of safe havens they use to launch attacks on all of our people.
Excellent. Excellent. Now Trump takes on Venezuela. Cut 10, go.
We have also imposed tough, calibrated sanctions on the socialist Maduro regime in Venezuela, which has brought a once thriving nation to the brink of total collapse. The socialist dictatorship of Nicolas Maduro has inflicted terrible pain and suffering on the good people of that country. This corrupt regime destroyed a prosperous nation by imposing a failed ideology that has produced poverty and misery everywhere it has been tried. To make matters worse, Maduro has defied his own people, stealing power from their elected representatives to preserve his disastrous rule. The Venezuelan people are starving, and their country is collapsing. Their democratic institutions are being destroyed. This situation is completely unacceptable, and we cannot stand by and watch.
Now that again sounds more like interventionism, doesn't it, Mr. Producer? In Iran, in Venezuela. I don't necessarily disagree with his points, by the way. Again, what's in the best interest of the United States may well be intervention. But it's not a form of radical interventionism that we hear so often from the John McCain types. Nor is it a pure so-called nationalism versus globalism, is it? Just pointing it out. Now, socialism or communism? I loved what he said here. Cut 11, go.
The problem in Venezuela is not that socialism has been poorly implemented, but that socialism has been faithfully implemented.
Now stop there. Sounds like about a quarter of them clapping, doesn't it? So the vast majority there are probably socialists and worse at the UN. Go ahead.
The Soviet Union to Cuba to Venezuela, wherever true socialism or communism has been adopted, it has delivered anguish and devastation and failure.
Yes, like the Democrat Party and Bernie Sanders. Go ahead.
The tenets of these discredited ideologies only contribute to the continued suffering of the people who live under these cruel systems. America stands with every person living under a brutal regime. Our respect for sovereignty is also a call for action. All people deserve a government that cares for their safety, their interests, and their well-being, including their prosperity.
Now, again, the president is talking in a fairly globalist way, as well as earlier in a nationalist way. So this is the bridge the so-called nationalists are going to have to figure out how to really, the bridge they're going to have to figure out how to build to have a rational ideology. And again, there's certain things here the president is saying, many things that I strongly agree with. I like what he's saying. I told you it's an outstanding speech, and it truly is. Matter of fact, as I sit here and listen to this, the never-Trumpers and the people who go on about, you shouldn't have voted for Trump, even though we may strongly disagree with him on issues like DACA and so forth, where Hillary Clinton would have gone there and further. Hillary Clinton would never give a speech like this. Ever. In fact, there's not a Democrat in Congress or a Democrat who's planning on running for president that we know of who would give a speech like this. This is a really, really good speech. Cut 12, go.
For decades, the United States has dealt with migration challenges here in the Western Hemisphere. We have learned that over the long term, uncontrolled migration is deeply unfair to both the sending and the receiving countries. For the sending countries, it reduces domestic pressure to pursue needed political and economic reform and drains them of the human capital necessary to motivate and implement those reforms. For the receiving countries, the substantial costs of uncontrolled migration are borne overwhelmingly by low-income citizens whose concerns are often ignored by both media and government.
And by the way, most of the heads of government sitting there understand this. The Democrat Party in the United States rejects it. Not because they don't understand this, but they're out for a completely different agenda, which is their own empowerment and their own expansion of their own power. Country not first, party first. Finally, cut 13, go.
Too often the focus of this organization has not been on results, but on bureaucracy and process. In some cases, states that seek to subvert this institution's noble aims have hijacked the very systems that are supposed to advance them. For example, it is a massive source of embarrassment to the United Nations that some governments with egregious human rights records sit on the UN Human Rights Council. The United States is one out of 193 countries in the United Nations, and yet we pay 22% of the entire budget and more. In fact, we pay far more than anybody realizes. The United States bears an unfair cost burden, but to be fair, if it could actually accomplish all of its stated goals, especially the goal of peace, this investment would easily be well worth it. Major portions of the world are in conflict, and some, in fact, are going to hell. But the powerful people in this room, under the guidance and auspices of the United Nations, can solve many of these vicious and complex problems.
Great speech, but little issues here, like, but the powerful people in this room under the guidance and auspices of the United Nations. No, I mean, in our case, I don't want to be under the guidance and auspices of the United Nations, do you? Still, don't get me wrong. It's a very, very good speech. But no, I don't want us to be under the guidance and auspices of the United Nations to solve complex problems because the UN's incapable of it. All right, we'll be right back, which is great. I've said, even those who criticize Trump, as we all do from time to time, one thing is clear, he loves America. Now, that was never clear to me with Obama. It just wasn't. I told you before, and I've said it again, I'll say it again. If you love America, you don't want to fundamentally transform it. It's like fundamentally transforming your spouse. You must not love your spouse if you want to fundamentally transform them. You know, it's hard to believe that 2017 is almost 3/4 over. Time doesn't stand still, so don't waste another minute. Join AMAC right now. AMAC is the Association of Mature American Citizens. It is the leading conservative voice for Americans aged 50 and up. And I am a member, and I know that to be true. And they're resolved to continue their mission to restore America's moral compass, to make America a better place for our children, to save America from liberal ideology. As an AMAC member, you'll also gain access to a variety of exclusive benefits and discounts that will help you save money. From car insurance and Medicare plans to discounts on hotels, car rentals, and more, AMAC is the organization to join. A voice for conservatism in Washington, exceptional benefits. It's the perfect group. What's not to love about that? Join AMAC right now. Go to www.amac.us, www.amac.us, or give them a call. They have a toll-free number, 888-262-2006. That's 888-262-2006. The Association of Mature American Citizens, the benefits are great. The cause is even greater. Join AMAC right now. Next up, Benjamin Netanyahu at the United Nations this afternoon. Cut 14, go.
Iran vows to destroy my country every day, including by its chief of staff the other day. Iran is conducting a campaign of conquest across the Middle East, and Iran is developing ballistic missiles to threaten the entire world. 2 years ago, I stood here and explained why the Iranian nuclear deal not only doesn't block Iran's path to the bomb, but actually paves it. because the restrictions placed on Iran's nuclear program have what's called a sunset clause. Now, let me explain what that term means. It means that in a few years, those restrictions will be automatically removed, not by a change in Iran's behavior, not by a lessening of its terror or its aggression. They'll just be removed by a mere change in the calendar. And I warned that when that sunset comes, a dark shadow will be cast over the entire Middle East and the world, because Iran will then be free to enrich uranium on an industrial scale, placing it on the threshold of a massive arsenal of nuclear weapons. That's why I said 2 years ago that the greater danger is not that Iran will rush to a single bomb by breaking the deal, but that Iran will be able to build many bombs by keeping the deal.
Mm-hmm. Cut 15, go.
I know there are those who still defend the dangerous deal with Iran, arguing that it will block Iran's path to the bomb. Ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly what they said about the nuclear deal with North Korea. And we all know how that turned out. Unfortunately, if nothing changes, this deal will turn out exactly the same way. That's why Israel's policy regarding the nuclear deal with Iran is very simple. Change it or cancel it. Fix it or nix it. Nixing the deal means restoring massive pressure on Iran, including crippling sanctions, until Iran fully dismantles its nuclear weapons capability. Fixing the deal requires many things, among them inspecting military and any other site that is a suspect, and penalizing Iran for every violation. But above all, fixing the deal means getting rid of the sunset clause. And beyond fixing this bad deal, we must also stop Iran's development of ballistic missiles and roll back its growing aggression in the region.
You know, as I listen to these two leaders, Trump earlier and Netanyahu now, what they say makes so much sense. It's just common sense. We're dealing with these rogue regimes that are threatening our allies, but threatening us, the United States, and in this case, threatening Israel. And I think about what kind of an administration Obama and his advisors would come up with such a lousy deal that would ensure war. Let me put it to you this way, ladies and gentlemen. If we don't get rid of this Iranian deal or fix it in such a way that I don't believe the Iranians will ever agree to, Obama has paved the way for war. Because Iran is not only an Islamo-Nazi dictatorship, it is a war machine. It is a terrorism. It's not that I do news, but I do things that speak of the news and elaborate on it. Benjamin Netanyahu at the United Nations today. Cut 16, go.
Today I have a simple message for Ayatollah Khamenei, the dictator of Iran. The light of Israel will never be extinguished. Netzach Israel lo yeshaker. Those who threaten us with annihilation put themselves in mortal peril. Israel will defend itself with the full force of our arms and the full power of our convictions. We will act to prevent Iran from establishing permanent military bases in Syria for its air, sea, and ground forces. We will act to prevent Iran from producing deadly weapons in Syria or in Lebanon for use against us. And we will act to prevent Iran from opening new terror fronts against Israel along our northern border. As long as Iran's regime seeks the destruction of Israel, Iran will face no fiercer enemy than Israel.
You see, there's the Prime Minister of Israel, the President of the United States, both having to warn our enemies about the same thing. And so these two men in many ways are united. And the fact of the matter is, North Korea is in reality a dire threat to our country. Iran will become a dire threat to our country. North Korea is a dire threat to Israel inasmuch as North Korea is providing technological and material assistance to Iran. And Iran is a dire threat not just to us, but to Israel and other countries, so-called moderate Arab Gulf countries, and not so moderate Arab Gulf countries that are in the region. Finally, Netanyahu, cut 17, go.
I appreciate President Trump's leadership, his commitment to stand by Israel's side, his commitment to advance a peaceful future for all. Together we can seize the opportunities for peace, and together we can confront the great dangers of Iran. The remarkable alliance between the United States and Israel has never been stronger, never been deeper. And Israel is deeply grateful for the support of the Trump administration, the American Congress, and the American people.
There you have it. Two wonderful, wonderful speeches, in my view. All right, I need to circle back because there's some breaking news since I've been on the air from Chuck Ross over at the Daily Caller. Remember, we began with this story about Paul Manafort, who was wiretapped. And let me tell you what I think is going on to some extent. I think now that the Obama administration, FBI leadership, the Obama administration, Department of Justice leadership, and others have in fact gotten warrants to surveil surrogates like Manafort, like Carter Page, for the purpose, listen to me, for the purpose of trying to get information on Trump through the back door. Just as Mueller is trying to pressure Manafort through every devious means he can conceive of to try and work his way up the ladder ultimately to Trump in some kind of a criminal case. I don't know what it would be, but some kind of criminal case. I believe, I want you to listen to me, I believe that under Obama, the Justice Department, including the FBI, the leadership, Comey and Lynch, among others, got their warrants through the FISA court, not so much for the purpose of getting a Carter Page or getting a Paul Manafort, those are small potatoes, but for the purpose of taking out Trump, for hoping to get information. They didn't have enough to get a warrant on Trump. Remember, the issue here is not one of criminality when you get a warrant from the FISA court. It's not your typical probable cause case. The issue is whether or not individuals are foreign agents of other governments and are in fact flacking for foreign governments. Okay? They could never get a FISA warrant on Trump. But they got one on these lobbyists or on people who've done business with foreign governments, or Russia in particular. The interesting thing about Manafort is I thought he represented the Ukraine, which, of course, is a victim of Russia. But whatever the case, here's the breaking story. Do we have our Meet the Depressed music handy, Mr. Producer? Now, you remember the CNN story, which I had before me. They had three supposed sources. Two of the supposed sources said what? That it's unclear, that there's nothing conclusive about Manafort's discussions with foreign entities or foreign individuals. So somebody has leaked this information for the purpose of putting more pressure on Manafort to buckle. Some individuals have leaked this information for tactical purposes to smear this guy. Again, I'm not a special pleader. Maybe he's done something wrong, but perhaps he doesn't. He hasn't. That's what's going on here. And there have been incessant leaks about this investigation as respects Mr. Manafort. Where are all the left-wing civil liberties groups? They're nowhere. Where are all the phony civil liberties individuals who write columns? They're nowhere. Where are the phony editorial pages with the phony liberal media outlets with their demands for civil liberties for Mr. Manafort? You won't find any. Now, if he was a cop killer, you'd see the opposite. Let him out of jail. He's been unjustly accused, whatever. This guy hasn't, in essence, been charged with anything, and yet look at what he's gone through. I don't even know this guy, but I feel sorry for what's taken place. I really do. I really do. He's committed the crime of the century or something. It's not as if he's Hillary Clinton with serial violations of the Espionage Act, in my humble opinion. So this is important. In his statement, Manafort's spokesman, Maloney, called on the Justice Department watchdog, the Inspector General, to immediately open an investigation into the leak. You know, I got to say something here, and I don't mean to offend. I sure as hell hope my friend Jeff Sessions is on this case. I really do. Now, he's not going to announce it to the public. He's not going to say to all of us, yeah, I'm doing a leak investigation. But I sure as hell hope they're all over this. And that would include investigating the highest ranks of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And that would include investigating the highest ranks of the Justice Department, aspects of it, in the criminal division, and it would certainly include investigating the special counsel's office, because these are the logical places these leaks come from. Where else would they come from? We know almost every aspect of this investigation of Mueller, or it would appear we do. We can't know for sure, but it would appear we do. We know an awful lot. And so this is unjust, this is unfair, and justice is supposed to be the opposite of unjust, isn't it? Now, the Justice Department did not respond to a request for comment about the Manafort leak. It's clear that CNN, which reported this, has yet to accept the fact or acknowledge what it did 6 months ago, which is to cover this up. And not just CNN. Again, I want to remind you, almost every single media outlet, bar a few, sought to cover up what was the rational, logical linkage of article to article and drawing proper conclusions. Instead, they were interested in screwing Trump because of the imprecision of his tweet, and yet it turns out his tweet was pretty damn close to precise. There was a wiretap. Remember they were saying, in this day and age, we don't use wiretaps. Wiretaps? You have no evidence of that. I do, you idiots. It was in the New York Times. Oh, you're just trying to confuse your audience. Yes, you're cobbling together 3 things, 2.5 things. You're drawing. You have no facts to back that up. You have nothing to back anything up. Well, then the reporting is a joke. And yes, you are, of course, like the FBI or any investigative agency, to draw conclusions, rational, logical conclusions from the information that's presented, right? And the rational, logical conclusion from the information presented 6 months ago was that there was at least one FISA court warrant. Now, I have a question. Many months ago, Landmark Legal Foundation filed a request with the FISA court judge. Probably the first time such a request has ever been filed, because keep in mind, we're not a party to anything. Yet we filed a what we called an amicus, because we didn't know what else to call it, with the FISA judge, that is the FISA court, with a list of all the leaks that had come out of the investigation related to what I believed at the time was, in fact, a FISA warrant that had been issued, and now we know it had been issued. And the judge very quickly said the matter's closed and so forth and so on. And yet, we also know that at one point she issued a scathing rebuke of the party or parties that sought the warrant, the FBI and the Department of Justice. Scathing. That it had essentially gone outside the parameters of the warrant, or had abused its authority, its power. That's pretty remarkable. Yet none of this has caught the attention of the gaggle of groupthink media out there. The gaggle of groupthink media. That what's taken place here under Comey, under Lynch, under Obama, under Susan Rice, on the whole gang, the whole crowd, is abusive police state tactics. And the phony New York Times and the phony Washington Post and the other phony liberal outlets really don't give a damn. They really do not give a damn. And it is strange indeed that we have a special counsel investigating Trump and Republican collusion with the Russians, when in fact we have something even more dire than even if that turned out to be true. Domestic, political, police state tactics and surveillance of an administration against a campaign of the opposite party. That continues to be, to me, a driving, critical issue. I'll be right back. One source funds these operations, all the other left-wing billionaires fund these operations. It's hard to turn them off. But we actually have people in this country who don't belong here and who protest and who know they won't be removed and there's no price to pay. And so they become even belligerent when they're dealing with Nancy Pelosi. Dreamers disrupt Nancy Pelosi's news conference yesterday. Really? Since you don't want to listen, we'll have to just go. Well, I don't want to listen. Why doesn't she just go, Mr. Producer? I don't listen to any of the leftists. Why don't they just go? Well, there you have it. Then we have this fellow, Keith Ellison. Keith Ellison, who used to work for Farrakhan, who has made numerous anti-Semitic comments, and the Democrats, I think they made him deputy chairman of the Democrat National Committee, which is their want and which is their habit. Free Beacon, cut 20, go.
So this is not someone else's fight. This is all of our fight.
But Sanctuary City. Yep, go ahead.
In the bullseye, and others of us are not exactly the target. Therefore, it is our responsibility to stand up, fight, and do the right thing. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm one of the people who believes we should give our neighbors sanctuary. And if you ask yourself, what would I do if I was a Gentile in 1941 if my Jewish neighbors were under attack by the Nazis? Would I give them sanctuary? You might be about to find out what you would do. Will you pass that moral test, or will you fail it?
If not, now's the time. This is Constitution Month. While you can, sign up. Go to levinforhillsdale.com, Levin for Hillsdale.com. If you didn't take care of preserving the Constitution, then you wouldn't be listening to my show. Right? Please care about it enough to learn about more as it applies to the Constitution. And now when you sign up to take the free course, even if you've taken it before, you can also download a free course guide, and that includes discussion questions. Use the guide for a small group or book club, even with your family. I mean, this is spectacular that this college, Hillsdale, is out there doing this sort of thing, providing free online courses. If you want to take them, they're really compelling and interesting. They're videos. They're less than 15 minutes long. You have a guidebook if you want to use it, in the comfort of your own home. Finally, an interesting and easy way to learn about the Constitution and our rights. And it's all at levinforhillsdale.com. The course and study guide are free. They're offered as part of Hillsdale's mission to prepare Americans to defend liberty. And once registered, you have access to and you can watch the lessons anytime you want. Pursue truth, defend liberty with Hillsdale College. Now, this offer ends September 30th. Sign up while you still can at levinforhillsdale.com. That's Levin for Hillsdale.com. We've covered a lot of areas, but I've got more. Because there's a lot of important stuff going on. And our buddy Ben Shapiro has a very good piece at his excellent website, The Daily Wire. And by the way, there are a number of excellent websites out there. I want to thank my buddy Larry O'Connor, a colleague on WMAL, for his great piece on Mediaite. And he writes at Mediaite now, and he'll add, I think, a lot of class to that operation, quite frankly. And there are others out there who've done an outstanding job. Conservative Review, of which I am editor-in-chief, uncovering this wiretap story, covering what took place 6 months ago. It's much appreciated. Over at Breitbart, Joel Pollack has done the same thing. Excellent job. I want to thank him, too. Over at the American Thinker, Thomas Lifson. Excellent. We want to salute. And many more. Many more who have pointed this out over at the Media Research Center. Oh, man, I hope I don't miss anybody. But none of the left-wing sites. They pretend none of this happened. But I want to go back to this issue of repealing Obamacare. We're not going to be able to have a clean repeal. But I really do think what's being proposed by Lindsey Graham and Bill Cassidy and some others is as best as we're going to get, and we ought to get behind it. Again, as a first step. You know how the Democrats always say, Obamacare is a first step? Okay, this is a first step. But if we don't do this, we're going to wind up with something much worse, I fear. And Shapiro points out 4 things we need to know. Medicaid gets slashed. Technically, Medicaid growth gets slashed. Instead of the federal government sending money to states on a need basis, states are given block grants. This is a big federalism issue. And more importantly, all the money is pooled and redistributed rather than granted to states that expanded their Obamacare subsidized Medicaid rolls. The goal would be to cut expected Medicaid funding on the federal level by 1/3 by 2026, eliminated entirely by 2027. But that's 10 years down the road. Who knows if that'll ever occur? But it's certainly a good target. I'm not saying it will occur, but it's the only proposal I know that's out there right now that may have a shot at the majority vote to at least attempt to do something about Medicaid. Number 2, Medicaid gets redistributed. The states hardest hit are those that have already expanded their Medicaid rolls, which attempted to take advantage of of Obama's subsidies. I would say exploited. The new rules would benefit states like Wisconsin, Alabama, Mississippi at the expense of states like New York and California. I would state it a little bit differently. Those states that became pigs and took Obamacare for the purpose of trying to balance their budgets and massively expand Medicaid at the same time, well, they're going to be reined in, as they should be. Those states that acted more responsibly, well, there's not much to rein in there, now is there? Number 3, no more individual mandate. This was always the least popular part of Obamacare, and it would disappear. This means many people would voluntarily drop out of the health care market. It also means that insurance companies would likely raise their rates to compensate. But here's the point. By dropping out, this is where the left is, as they are all the time, lying. They'll tell you about all these people dropped from health care. No, most of the people, or certainly many of the people, will be people who voluntarily want to get out of it. And most of them are young people. Number 4, states get the ability to waive essential benefits. Under this new plan, states could waive certain so-called essential health benefits. Opening up the market some more. Pre-existing conditions regulations would remain on the basis of sex, for example, but states could waive regulations forcing insurance companies to cover certain essential health benefits. And remember, that's just a large bucket of things that the federal government wants these companies to cover, even if they have nothing to do with what you want to be covered. The bill still requires states to show how the state intends to maintain adequate and affordable health insurance coverage for individuals with pre-existing conditions. So it's not perfect by any means, But it's better than Obamacare, and it's certainly better than single payer. And it does have certain federalism aspects to it. So remember, these guys are trying to cobble together something that might actually, blow out Obamacare and then build from there. Now, there's a great piece in the New York Post. There was a great piece in the New York Post. It was September 15th. And on this single-payer issue, and what Bernie Sanders is supporting, and 1/3 of the Democrats in the United States Senate now support socialist health care. That's what a single-payer means. But I really like the way the New York Post put this, and you should really consider doing it the same way. And the way they wrote this, Obamacare falsely promised Americans they could keep their health care plans. But what Democrats really had in mind is now clear. They want everyone to lose their insurance and take what government gives them instead. That is a perfect and accurate way to state it. That's obvious from Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All scheme, rolled out Wednesday, that's last week, with support of the party's chief 2020 presidential hopefuls. So, Obamacare kicked some 7 million people off their existing plans. But Bernie's bill would outlaw both employer-paid health care and private insurance for individuals. You know what that means, ladies and gentlemen? As they point out in the New York Post, more than half the country, 180 million people, would lose their current plans, which they're mostly happy with, and switch to Bernie care. Most of the other half is already under some form of government health care. So the rest of us who have private health care would be kicked out of our private health care plans. 180 million people, more than half the country when you consider there's 320 million. That's what Bernie Sanders and the other kooks in his party would do. Think of it as medical care run by, say, motor vehicles or the Veterans Administration. Long lines, dangerously long waits for treatment, shoddy service, scarce resources, fewer choices, and monster bills. Sanders and company won't talk about the cost, but independent estimates put it at $1.4 trillion or more a year. Nor do they say where that money will come from. Now, this kind of repeats things that we've been talking about many, many, many times. Though Sanders has floated some ideas, raise taxes through the roof. And if that crashes the economy, tough. Okay, we get it. These Democrats don't like competition or free markets. They believe government should run things, everything. It's why they fight to keep the government monopoly over schools. But competition from, say, charter schools has proven the better model in public education. Lawmakers should be looking for ways to boost competition, not scrap it. As for Bernie's offer of free health care for all, why trust that after all the broken promises of Obamacare? But what I liked about the presentation here, 180 million of us would lose our private health care, all the rest of us. Whatever it is, you're going to lose it, and you're going to be forced into a government plan, and the government will decide what you get it, if you get it, and when you get it. And that's very, very important to remember. Andre, Washington, D.C., WMAL. Go right ahead.
Hey, Mark. Good evening. Thanks for taking my call.
You got it.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to what I overheard with the Dreamers at the Pelosi meeting when they made that statement about a immigration machine. I think that they hit the nail on the head in the sense that there are a lot of other folks other than their parents who were involved in illegal immigration. I think that we had a lot of corporations who made money from the immigrant labor.
Why do we keep talking about the symptoms and who's involved in what? Why not just end it?
I would say we should end it, and I would say we do need to build a wall. But at the same time, I don't think we should only, if we're going to be fair, if it's about justice.
No, it's about the law. It's not about fair. It's about the law.
Well, I would say
because fair. You could argue that your position is fair. I could argue my position is fair. Fact of the matter is, you need to follow the law.
And I think a lot of people did not follow the law. It wasn't just the parents. It was the companies that hired people who they knew.
Well, what does that? Did companies hire 5-year-olds, sir? We're talking about DACA.
The companies hired their parents.
I see.
And I'm saying that if we're
so, what do you want to do?
I think we should be fair in applying the justice. So all of them. It shouldn't just be the...
So do what? What do you want to do?
Well, if we're going to do something about it, then we tell the companies that they got to pay back the money that they made from illegal labor.
Okay, so you're interested in redistribution of wealth. The DACA thing is a side issue with you.
I'm interested in justice.
Now, you understand that companies don't go into foreign countries, hijack or get these people, force them against their own will, kidnap them, and bring them into the United States. You do understand that, right?
Yeah, but you do understand.
Now, pay attention. I'm educating you. You do understand that people have come into this country illegally in the first place, right?
Yeah, but the companies, what they would do is...
I forget about the companies. Let's say that... Well, let's do it this way. What about the ones that aren't hired by companies? What should we do with them?
If you're here and you decide not to work and you decide to live off welfare, then of course you should go. But what I am saying is that for those who did work, for those who worked for companies, that employ them knowing full well that they were illegal, they should bear the brunt of the law as well. And when we focus on just the quote-unquote illegal...
Well, who said companies that hire illegal aliens shouldn't be prosecuted? Did somebody say that?
Well, it's not happening. All the focus has been...
Well, it ought to happen. That's not all the focus. You say all the focus on illegal aliens, and all the focus is in trying to legalize them and give them citizenship. Is there anybody focused on deporting them? Can you give me the name of one Republican leader, one Democrat leader, or the President of the United States, for that matter, who are talking about deporting people who came here before, listen to me, came here before 2007 as children? Who is proposing deporting them in our national leadership?
I would say that the proposals are out there. I would say
All right, yeah. See, you're dancing. Fact of the matter is, Trump doesn't want to deport them. McConnell doesn't want to deport them. Paul Ryan doesn't want to deport them. I'm not aware of any single Democrat who wants to deport them.
I would
Are you?
respectfully disagree. I would, yeah.
Well, give me their names. Who are they? Who are they? Give me their names. No, Trump does not. In fact, he said he doesn't. I asked you about the leadership of either party, including the President of the United States. And the reason you can't give me an answer is because the answer is none of them. None of them.
I can't give you an answer because I don't have all the names in front of me. I could get all the names.
I didn't give... Okay, McConnell, yes or no?
No, he doesn't want to deport them.
Paul Ryan, yes or no?
No, he doesn't want to deport them.
Nancy Pelosi, yes or no?
No, she doesn't want to deport them.
Chuck Schumer, yes or no?
No, he doesn't want
Donald
to deport
Trump, yes or no?
Yes, he does.
No, he doesn't. Now you're not telling the truth. He's made it quite clear that he has no intention of deporting these people. All right, my friend. Appreciate your call. He wants to get the companies. Everybody wants to get the companies. Get them. Tax them. Break them up. Let them consolidate. Make them do this. Make them do that. Put tariffs on them. Make them buy America. Make them do this. Make them do that. But I support liberty, you know. Oh, yes, I do. I support the Constitution, you know, and the Declaration of Independence and all this stuff. Look, if companies are knowingly hiring people who are illegal aliens, the laws are on the books, prosecute them. Prosecute them. But then again, there's laws on the books. If people are here illegally, remove them. But lawlessness begets lawlessness. I'll be right back. You know what doesn't? Surprising them with an out-of-the-blue bouquet from 1-800-Flowers.com. Nothing tops the excitement of receiving a 1-800-Flowers bouquet. And right now, 1-800-Flowers is giving our listeners, you, an exclusive 36 for 36 offer. Listen to this. 36 autumn roses for just $36. That's only $1 per rose. This beautiful arrangement of fall, red, orange, and yellow roses will leave your loved ones stunned without spending a fortune. Now, these gorgeous roses from 1-800-Flowers are picked at their peak and shipped overnight to ensure freshness. 36 autumn roses for only $36. That is an amazing deal. There's 800flowers.com, and then there's everybody else. You know who I trust and depend on for life's most important moments? To order 36 autumn roses for only $36. Do this right now. Go to 1-800-Flowers.com. That's 1-800-Flowers.com. Click on the radio icon and enter code LEVIN, L-E-V-I-N. Then you're off to the races. That's 1-800-Flowers.com. Hit that radio icon, enter code LEVIN. Hurry, because the offer ends this Friday. Don't wait. You'll forget. Just do it. I gave you the number. It's as simple as that. All right. Albert, where are you in West Virginia?
Southern West Virginia, in the middle of the coal fields.
There you go, brother. On the Mark Levin app. You go ahead.
What I think about the immigration thing, everybody that's here illegally does need to go. They need to go. There are plenty of Americans that don't have jobs. And if you get some of this unskilled labor out of here, they will get jobs.
You know what's interesting, Albert? Even under this so-called DACA law that Obama put in place unconstitutionally, and now Republicans are trying to figure out a way to institutionalize, including the president, it's for kids who were brought here 2007 and before. You know what's going to happen next, Albert? They're going to say, okay, it's 2017, 2018. Now we want the kids who are brought here between now and 2007. We want them to get amnesty, too, but they won't call it amnesty. And on top of that, you know what happens under current law, Albert? Chain migration. This is the biggest amnesty in our history if this takes place. Go ahead.
The DACA. Besides, it's a BS because it's not 850,000. It's more like 3 or 4 or 5 million.
No, 7 million was an estimated conservative review.
Tell the kids, everybody's under age 36,